Lesson 8.3, Quadratic Equations. So, we're trying to factor some quadratics. The first thing we do is we look at the last number in the problem. Up in the formula up here, that's C. Now, in order to figure out what C is, you have to figure out what times what makes C. So in the example number 1, we take 12 and we try to figure out what ways can we multiply and get 12. The ways that you can get 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Okay? Now, before I factor this, I'm going to have two parentheses. Now, what goes in the front of each parenthesis is decided by the variable that's in the front of the problem. So here we have x squared. So since we have an x squared, I'm going to put an x and an x in front of each parenthesis, because the only way to multiply and get x squared is x times x. If it was y squared, I'd put a y and a y, and so forth. Now the other number that's part of this comes from the 12. Once we figure out all the ways to multiply 12, we then take those numbers and add them together. 1 plus 12 is 13. 2 plus 6 is 8. And 3 plus 4 is 7. Only one of those can be the right answer. Now if you look in the middle, there's a 7. That tells you which two numbers you want to use. So you put a plus 3 and a plus 4, because 3 times 4 multiplies to get 12, but adds up to 7. So it has to multiply to be the last number, but add up to the middle number. Now, in the second example here, I'd like you to take a moment and figure out what two numbers multiply and give you 24. Hopefully you'll find one set of numbers that multiplies and gives you 24 that adds up to 11. So the ways that make 24, 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8. Ooh, I think I can stop right there, because isn't 3 plus 8 11? So since 3 plus 8 is 11 and 3 times 8 is 24, I'm going to put x plus 3 and x plus 8. And that's the answer to B. That's how you factor. Multiply to be the last number, add to be the middle number. Let's look at some problems now with some negative signs or minus signs. All right, here in example 2, we have 27 as my number at the end. So I'm going to put two parentheses first, put an x in each parenthesis. Now 27 is 1 and 27, 3 and 9. Now 3 plus 9 does equal 12. However, if you look, it's negative 12. So to make the 12 negative, the 3 would have to be negative, and so would the 9. Fortunately, negative 3 times negative 9 is still positive 27, because a negative times a negative is positive. So in this problem, I'm going to put minus 3 and minus 9, because once again, negative 9 times 3 is positive 27, and negative 3 plus negative 9 is negative 12. So I'd like you to try to figure out what times what makes 2. And in this problem, I'm going to put some c's, since it's a c squared, not an x squared. Okay, so 2 times 2, the only way to multiply and get 2 is 1 times 2. Well, I still need a negative 3, so I'm going to make negative 1 and negative 2, because add those two together, I still get negative 3. So I'm going to have a minus 1 and a minus 2 in my two-factor parentheses. All right, let's continue on with the negative being shifted to different parts of the trinomial. In example 3, this time the 18 is the negative term. So I'm still going to have two parentheses to start, x in the front of each. And now I'm going to try to figure out what times what makes negative 18. Now, if you're going to have a negative 18, one of the numbers needs to be negative. Either the 1 or negative 18. Or maybe it's negative 2 and 9, or negative 9 and 2. Negative 3 and 6, negative 6 and 3. One of those needs to add up to 3. And if you check, negative 3 plus 6 is positive 3. You have to make sure the 3 is the negative, because if it was negative 6 plus 3, that's negative 3, not the number I want. I want positive 3. So I'm going to put in my parentheses a negative 3 and a positive 6. One of them's negative, one of them's positive. Okay, so with the second one here, I'd like you to figure out what times what makes negative 48. I'm going to go ahead and put two parentheses down and put an n in front of each one. Take a moment and figure this out. Okay, so negative 1, negative 48. I don't think this is going to work. Negative 2 and 24, negative 24 and 2. None of those work. So I keep going. If you can't figure out what times what makes 48, take your calculator and divide by each number systematically. Divide by 1, divide by 2. Next, I'm going to divide by 3. And if necessary, I'll divide by 4, using my calculator to figure out what the answer is. Now, before I go on and do any more, I should check and make sure to see if I have a 13 in one of these. And I believe negative 3 plus 16 will result in a positive 13. So I'm going to put a negative 3 and a positive 16. So you need to check all of the options. If you actually check all of the options and still can't find an answer, then you're allowed to write prime. And you can only write prime if you can't find an answer. If it is not factorable. So if you try, and still can't get it to work, then you're allowed to write prime. Otherwise, you need to keep looking. Okay, the last slide. Now I've put negative in both parts. So just like in the beginning, I'm going to put two parentheses down and an x to start each parenthesis. Now, negative 20, negative 1 and 20, negative 20 and 1, negative 2 and 10, negative 10 and 2. Now, what number am I trying to add up to in the middle? There's no number there, so that, of course, is a 1. So I'm trying to get negative 1. I don't think any of the options I've written out so far will add up to negative 1. So the other way to get to 20 is 4 and 5. So negative 4 and 5, negative 5 and 4. One of these needs to add up to negative 1. And if I look at the last one, that's where I'll find it. Negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1. So negative 5, positive 4. And it doesn't matter which number goes in the parenthesis first, the 4 or the 5, because of commutative property. So take a moment and work on this last one. I'll start it out with putting p's, and then ask you what times what makes negative 35 here in a minute. Well, I don't think negative 1 and 35 will work. The only way I can think of to get 35 is negative 5 and 7, or negative 7 and 5. Only one of them will give me the negative 2. And I believe that is the last one. Negative 7 plus 5 is negative 2. So I'm going to put a minus 7 in one parenthesis and a plus 5 in the other. And that's how you factor trinomials when there's no number in front of the x squared or p squared. All right?